I was brought up in Egypt, and it was not easy to be raised in Egypt as a young girl. And I felt a lot of my creativity was stifled. My creativity was a threat to some. It was something that was scary and too much. And so I learned to hide my dance, my song, my eccentric love of colors and weird hairstyles and everything that I had that expressed my nature as a young girl and also as a young woman. I bottled it in. And it wasn't until I had a few very strong episodes, cathartic episodes of mental health that was very disturbing to me and my family. And for me, it was just a cry for help. It's like, I'm not doing well. Like, I need something to change here. I'm just getting strangled. And for my father, it was the sign that the devil possessed me and I needed an exorcism. So you can see how there was like this clash, my inner world and mentality, which really understood that there was something very natural about expression, creativity, even our erotic current. And yet what I was met by was a lot of opposition and a lot of fear that I would in any way express that fully or even, just openly. And so that led me on a journey of deep shamanic underworld journeys from my teens. And in my teens, I was already fascinated by the myths of Inanna and Isis, who till this day are very dear to me because as a young girl, story and mythology really helped me forge my path forward. And I feel that sometimes in those moments of life, like where, we need to draw upon the inner worlds to even get any sense of understanding of what this whole thing is, like being on this planet, being a soul, being alive, being in a body, having feelings, having emotions, having desires, having fears. And so for me, these stories and myths were a great ally and guide. And and so for the last over a decade, around, almost 15 years, I've been diving very deep into the inner realms of just the inner vibrational realms through shamanism, through deep meditations and yoga, and for the last 7 years, very deeply on the shamanic Egyptian path. So anyway, that's a little bit about me, so you understand where I'm coming from. And today I look forward to sharing some of these stories, mythologies, leave some space open for any questions and so on and so forth. So if you have anything you want to say, please use the chat to express yourself. For those who are here, just feel free to express yourself. Even if you're on the other side, you're here. So anything you want to say, any questions, just reach out. Cool. So let's take a deep breath in together. With every inhale, just filling the lungs, filling the body, your cells with this life-giving breath. And a deep exhale helps to make some sound, to relax your jaw. To arrive. Just for a moment now, just forget everything you were doing, everything you have to do after this, just coming into this very present moment through breathing and feeling yourself. Feeling the density of your bones, of your matter, of your muscle. The sensation of your circulation moving through your body. There's a flow, a rise, a fall continuously of your breathing, of your circulation. And maybe your feelings are invoked during this next hour, or your memories, or your imagination. They're all parts of your nature. So inviting all of your nature to be here. So let's begin with just feeling this land of Egypt, which for me is a place I love very much. And the incredible uh, uh, gift of Egypt is like the extremes and finding a way to balance this polarity of extremes into the heart. And one way that's so extreme is, there's the River Nile, which gives lots of life, and then all around is desert. So it's water that gives life. And just like in our bodies, if we're full of water, 99 point, actually 90, about 99% water. If we look at it on a very subatomic level, and when we flow, we know we're flowing. We give water, we nourish the parts of us that would be dry. And so this flow of water gives life. And so we are in a way like earth. And so where there is a watering, where there is a nourishment, where we put our intent and our intent to nourish and to water our lives, there will be creation. And sometimes we just burn in the desert. It's just what's happening. We're in the desert of our life and things feel very, very empty, very spacious, very still. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's a blissful stillness. So we are so much like nature. And that's a lot of what these ancient temples share with us from Egypt, that we are nature. As above, so below, as within, so without. There is no disconnection other than the mind, the aspect, the faculty of the mind that separates through judgment. Otherwise, we are in a union with nature. We are made of elements: fire, water, air, ether, earth. We eat, goes into our bodies, we excrete, we take in sunlight, we need to drink water, and we have breath. And so when we start to, in a way, start to attune ourselves to nature, we realize we are nature. And nature has seasons, we have cycles. It's a time sometimes of great darkness and chaos, and other times it's a time of great light and manifestation. And we cannot just be in a constant state of one thing, because life's constantly in a rhythm and also in a constant state of change. And these comes from the very basic hermetic laws and principles of Thoth or Tehuti. So yes, so let's just take a breath into feeling this element of breath for a moment. Yeah. So the creation myths, there's actually 3 creation myths, and this is the first time I share it. And there depends from different places in Egypt, we have different myths. So in Hermopolis, which was the place designated for Thoth or Tehuti, the myth is that that life was born and created from, there were 4 couples, and I just want to say who they were briefly. So we have Nun and Nunet, which represent water. He and Hohet, which represent the infinity or the motion or the notion of infinity. Kek and Kuket, which mean darkness. And Amun and Amunet, which means the hidden. And this is very beautiful, because before any creation happens, there's a state of this infinite spaciousness, which is also dark. It's hidden and watery. So if we look at our lives sometimes, this high performance, let's get shit done and da-da. Yeah, sometimes we actually need to go deep into the unknown and hidden parts of ourselves that don't make any sense. This is a state which they call the primordial chaos. Nothing is created yet, but there is the possibility of creation. So this is very beautiful. And actually these are symbolized by snakes and frogs. So it's also very primitive parts of us, like the really primitive parts of us that no creation arises from our being when we are still in the infinite space, where we are flowing, nothing makes sense. We feel in a way something is hidden, but we don't know what it is. And yet we keep going into that more veiled part of us. And it's dark. It's not light yet. It hasn't shown itself or revealed itself. So these are really important. These steps are really important when we go into wanting to create whatever it is. Maybe it's just to go about creating the day or to go about creating a project or to go about even creating life with someone or in a partnership, whatever it is, to embrace these qualities, which some say are very deep feminine qualities. I just feel they're very natural qualities. They come from nature. So they're not feminine or masculine. It's just a state of being that can relax a little more into this notion of unknown and a little bit more chaos. So from this place where there was nothing, a tomb emerged. And the beautiful thing is, like, there came a mound of earth from these primordial waters. So it's like a stability. And there was the lotus. So the lotus, I work a lot with the Blue Lotus medicine. And what I love about it is when it's drunk or when it's worked with, usually it takes us into the underworld places. So the places in our unconsciousness. And the Blue Lotus is a beautiful reminder in a way of our human soul journey. This whole aspiration of light and love isn't really that natural. Sometimes we have to go into places which are not just love, but actually absent of love, and are dark. And there is a great depth, because our soul also, the journey of our soul goes through night and day, goes through darkness and light. And every day, every night, this happens. So it's a more natural state to say light and dark, dark light. To embrace this aspect of our being, of our spiritual nature. And so from the lotus, when it is consumed, it can take us into those places that are more hidden. So it can show us our deeper fears, our hidden secrets, the parts of us that we've locked up, especially memories that we've kind of needed to close behind doors because maybe they're too much to confront. Our shadow aspects too, the parts of us that we see or deem or judge as maybe perverse or shameful, parts that we don't want to identify with. So the lotus, the roots go deep into these chaotic primordial waters. And as beings, we are made up of beautiful, graceful, radiant qualities. And we also contain deep roots in our unconscious psyche. And that in the realms when we go and work with Isis will be like, do not distinguish between either or. They're all a part of me. It's all a part of you. There is no better or worse, actually. So the lotus has its roots in these deep mud, this muddy, murky, chaotic soup that's a part of us. And there are also, we'll get to the next part. From the lotus comes the scarab, the beetle. And this is our fertility. It's our ability to create. It's our ability to move with the cycles of our rhythm throughout the day, through our moods, through our feelings. You know, we're not just one thing all the time. We're so different. Like we're so, we change, and this is natural. And then from the scarab arises a child with tears, and the tears in ancient Egypt were very important. These tears of joy and also of sorrow created humanity. And so that's the first creation myth. And I want to speak about these tears because they come up also in the deeper mythologies of Isis. When she grieves and sheds tears, that's when insanity becomes sane again, and it's coming back to the senses. So to feel sorrow and to feel joy are natural states, and to express them through tears is extremely a powerful force of creativity. So for those who find it hard to express, I would say that coming to a point where you can give yourself spaciousness to shed some tears, often it's like almost opens up doors or vibrates the body in a certain way, the emotional body in a certain way, to invite a deeper sense of creativity. So yeah, these tears are very precious. And I'm not going to just say they're tears of sadness, they're also tears of joy, fluids, the sacred fluids. So that's one myth that came from Hermopolis, which is a more Thoth to Huti mystery school, or school of thought. And I love adapting these stories into ways that make them feel like they're part of our everyday life. And so one of the most beautiful things about life, I feel, is feeling creativity, bringing in artistry. Even science is an amazing art when it starts to be infused with a sense of feeling and wonder. And this is a very important part, or a key to unlocking our journey as a soul, to understand who we are, why we're here, and not just to understand it, but to feel it. All right, so that's the first myth. The second one is also very beautiful, from Heliopolis, which Heliopolis was based around the school of Ra, or the sun. It was a very solar temple. And there was the same thing, waters of chaos. And this is beautiful. Atum self-pleasures, or let's say, if in more in other ways, he masturbates and comes. And from his ejaculation, a mound forms. So it's like the waters form then earth creation, an obelisk, a mound of earth, just like the other one, comes out of these waters. And he then embraces his shadow, marries his shadow in a way, merges with his own shadow. And from there, through his sacred ejaculation, comes air and moisture, shu and tefnut. So this is another way. So parts of, maybe some of you know the work I do also with Ista, spiritual sexual shamanism. We deeply embrace the work with our sexuality and with our shadow, because these are important aspects of our journey as a soul, as a being. If we're journeying in our spiritual life and only looking at the light, we actually miss some of the greatest depth and greatest sense of feeling and connection to life itself. Even one of the rituals, not rituals, there were more initiations that happened for the initiate. They would put the initiate in water, dark water with crocodiles in it, and shine a light on one side. Now, the initiate who was looking at the light, which is what a lot of us do when we're in spiritual seeking, we look for the light. What would happen is, if the initiate swam towards the light, he wouldn't see the crocodiles around him. There was an initiate who swam into the deep dark that could actually see the crocodiles and actually find a way to maneuver to come out safely. So I'm glad we don't have to go through these types of initiations. We can have different types in this modern day. But just to remember that this striving only for the light doesn't serve as much as also striving to look into the dark. So we want to look into both. So here, a tomb from these waters, self-pleasures, another important thing, sexual energy. How can there be any creation without sexual energy? So this is a very important part of all creation myths, and here especially. And from the air and moisture, they form then create. So air and moisture creates then Geb and Nut. And Geb and Nut are, Geb is the father, the earth, So our earth is actually in ancient Egypt considered the father, so Pachapapa, and the sky or the universe is the mother. And Nut is the mother. She births the sun, she births the galaxies and the stars, all from her womb. And Geb sustains and holds life. And if you look at every tree, every flower, it's almost like coming out of the earth, erected with seeds, with the ejaculate. And what comes from the sky, mother, is inspiration, is seeding through the stars. So part of the Egyptian culture is super cosmic, but so grounded at the same time, because it has a solid root in the earth, really solid physical presence in the body, strength and vitality was ultimately important. And then also our ability to look to the stars for inspiration, to realize that every night, according to the Egyptians, we die and go into the underworld as a soul, and we are reborn again. So it's up to us how much we want to take with us as luggage and take with us into our inner world and psyche, and actually not give things permission to die. Cancer, I feel like it's actually, they say, more of a dis-ease that has come about in our modern times, because death is not a part of life anymore. Even COVID, this whole pandemic is in a way, I feel, this wake-up call or shaking from nature saying, we're all going to die. You're dying all the time. We die as humans. This incredible mirror of the fear of death, because death is not welcomed into beings' homes. It's a very taboo thing, just as sex and death have become great taboos. Many religions don't want to talk about sex or even make it something sinful, shameful. So we grow up with these incredible, almost like sticky kind of places in our base of our body, which is our creativity and expression, but it dulls it in a way, shame and fear and guilt, and stops the throat from expressing. So when we start to do the deeper release work from our fear and shame and guilt, it starts to vibrate through the throat, through the chest, and through the genitals, through the root, through the anus. These parts start to open up, vibrate, and expand so that we can sound again. So let's just take a breath into that for a moment. In ancient Egypt, an erection of a penis was seen as a sign of great fortune, great luck, prosperity, fertility. Temples were adorned with erect phalluses, and some of these phalluses are shooting seed and ejaculate, and the seed then goes into the earth and creates plants and life. And the same, like the Milky Way or the stars above us, Nut, it is only from her breast milk that comes to earth, breast milk, like that creates the trees and the waters and the leaves and the animals. Like it's that sap of life. It's a sexual fluid. It's an erotic, sensual fluid. And it's this disconnect from that I feel makes us so far away from our own creativity and abilities to co-create with creator, with nature, the lives that we deserve to live, and live on a planet the way we deserve to live. So we have that power to create. And I feel the more we tap into these ancient cultures, by feeling them, resonating them, we can really access and draw through some powerful wisdom, and not just understanding, but deep embodiment of how to be a soul on this planet. So this whole thing around going to bed at night and waking up with the sunrise and birthing yourself anew, birthing fresh, means waking up fresh, not carrying the burden of the past and the last 10 or 20 years and all the regrets and worries and should haves and what if, and then it becomes a mental fog, and it's not waking up with the freshness. It's waking up out of the deep, dark abyss. But this, according to these myths, if we look at them, that's the primordial soup in which we create ourselves. So regardless of what's happened, it's your will and intent that will shift this. So part of the creation out of this muddy water, chaotic water, is the power of will. And it's our willpower to see through, our willpower to rise into the lotus, the willpower to actually rise towards the soul emerging, which is the symbol of the lotus, from the mud to the sun to the lotus. So we go into these underworld places, but eventually we rise, and we rise with our soul gift and our soul emerging into the world with its gifts. This is the ultimate journey. So our creativity becomes a soul emergence into the world. And according to the Egyptians, the lotus was also depicted as this child, because eventually we, regardless of what age or what gender, we become this androgynous child. And it is this divine child or androgynous child that will begin its co-creation with life. It won't come from the part of us that identifies deeply with being this or that or that, or yeah, it comes from an aliveness from the soul that expresses itself. It's beyond gender. It's beyond anything other than an innocence and a wonder and a deep will to create, to want. It's really healthy to want things. It's really healthy to desire things, because it's that wanting and desire that will actually move forward. So let's take a breath into that for a moment. Maybe just curious, if for those who are here, if you're following, maybe just you could make a sign that you're here, that you're interested, or that it's resonating, anything at all. Yeah. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just speaking to a screen. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just weird not seeing anyone. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, part of the work that I offer is, very much we journey through the temples of Egypt, and there's a very specific grid and journey. And for those who are here, I did another video a few weeks ago around the journey through the temples. And according to the ancient Egyptians, they depicted us so much as that we are souls, like we are, yes, inhabiting this fleshy suit, which is our elemental body, but ultimately we are souls. And the soul comes from the stars. It is a spark of a solar flame. It is a divine spark of this universe, and it incarnates through this body. Every night when we sleep, our soul actually needs to return back. So at night, it journeys through the Milky Way and through the whole solar, through this Milky Way, through the zodiac signs, through the astrology signs. And you'll see this very clear in the Temple of Dendera, that the soul journeys on a boat through all 12 zodiac signs. And you can see Aries and Taurus and Cancer. So the Greeks very much learned and studied in these temples and schools. And then it would be birthed out of Nut's womb and yoni in the morning. So it was a birth. So it was a very, it's a full embodied action that happened from the Nut giving birth to the sun in the morning, and at night swallowing the sun. So it's a very sensual, I feel, explanation of how the soul journeys through. And so our soul is also depicted as having wings. And to the ancient Egyptians, you'll see this a lot: wings, feathers, because the soul's nature is to want to fly. It wants to go home, it flies. And so being in this dense world and these dense bodies, in a very dense world of duality with a lot of heavy emotion, like these deep waters everywhere, chaotic waters. And so when we close our eyes, it's just like the full permission to soar for a moment, to return home. And so working with our dreams, working with the dream parallel world is really important. And the more you start to, in a way, become more subtle and attuned to the nature of the soul, to your soul nature, you'll realize how important sleep is, how important dreaming is, and you'll start to recognize where you go in the sleep space and how much that can also nourish your everyday life, working with your dreamscapes. working with the parallel worlds in between. And so taking a nap throughout the day when you're tired, just let the soul for a moment breathe and fly. Again, this high performance stress society is unnatural. And I don't want to say it's a feminine thing. I want to just say it's a natural soul part of our life. We need to sometimes switch off for half an hour, and give ourselves permission to just dream. As children, we're told this makes us lazy or we get bored, but these are very healthy attributes when in balance with our will and our direction and our action. So we actually need both. And for the soul, or for our soul nature, if we want to cultivate a soul nature in our life, taking time to let ourselves lighten up, which means switch off and return for a moment to source by lighting up. So one thing that I love is to just like imagine I'm lifting everything from my mind, just lifting it up, creating space. Anything in the heart, lift it up, give it up. It's not just offer it all up. Any density in the body, relax the body, take a bath, like breathe slowly into anywhere where there is tension. We really need this sense of spaciousness in order to actually let this winged part of ourselves emerge. It's such a beautiful culture of artistry and elegance and beauty. So much of what they draw on the walls, just exquisite art. And this was a language, this was a handwriting. Beauty was their signature of the divine. It was so important, beauty, even that when you look at hieroglyphics, even the way they write in sentences, sometimes they mix things up just to create symmetry and beauty. And so one part, when you study, if you want to learn how to read the hieroglyphics, they'll be like, be open to your creative mind to start actually realizing, like, sometimes you need to shift things around, just because of how important beauty was, symmetry, balance, harmony. And that also doesn't mean perfection. It just means honoring beauty in life. So the ultimate journey at the end of the gateways, I'm not going to say too much here. There's other videos that you can see of the journey of returning home, is going through different initiations, through different temples. But ultimately, at the end, you reach the place of Nefertum, the Blue Lotus, the divine child, the androgynous being that's not identified anymore by gender polarity. It's just like, I am. And then what opens then is the beauty way. And this means a decaying bouquet of flowers. You can see the beauty in that as much as a fresh spring rose that's opening. You can see the beauty in a beautiful maiden, as well as in the older crone, that there isn't that distinguish between, this is beautiful and this is not, but it's like, wow, here's creation all around me, changing. Everything becomes a glimpse into beauty, into the divine nature. And one of the temples, which is Hathor, which was so much about sexuality and beauty and reverence and dreams and colors and imagination, was also one of the rituals that I can offer, is like that you look in the mirror, and the first time you see yourself, and what usually happens in the mirror is like, oh my God, I got black bags in my eyes. I need to do this. Oh my God, like there's always that first thought in the mirror. And then it's like, okay, great. Have that first glimpse, and now look again, and look who's looking back at you. And there will be the eyes of divine gazing back. And it's only judgment, only that inner critic that will ever look at anything else. But those eyes, look into the mirror with those eyes and see yourself looking back. That's a beautiful moment of recognition that you are one with nature. And so take that with you. I highly encourage you to do that ritual in the mirror, and you'll see that like a really soft kind of inner embrace of the heart starts to happen with that. And especially in a culture that adores beauty as youth, or in a certain look, or in a certain way, but to start to see the beauty in all the processes, gradual processes of life, is a very powerful act of, embracing not just your inner love, but your inner nature, your inner creator. So, great. So, let's share a little bit more now just about conception. So for those of you, I don't know if you can make it, on April the 22nd, I offer a Nile journey from the Temple of Aswan, which is the Temple of Isis, 8 days on a boat. Then we fly up to Cairo and go to the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. And this journey is this one specifically in April is called Conception. The first one was called Resurrection. And this is about really coming clear with your intent. What are you creating? What are you willing to create? What are you excited to create? Where is your energy really at in your life? So if you are called, we still have a few more places to join this Nile journey. And there we really journey through the temples in a very beautiful process. We have a couple who wants to come conceive a child. We have another couple who wants to come on, but then there's also other beings who just come to seed themselves, to conceive their own soul into the world, their own gift into the world. So if you feel called to join this, please write to me after or find out. But otherwise, and if you're in your life, when you start to realize, okay, wow, I'm in this chaotic, deep, dark water of my life, and I'm kind of just going along with everything, but I'm not feeling like my soul is really shining in the world, or I'm just kind of not feeling like I feel a bit sticky or stuck, which is a natural state. As we said, this is the beginning stage of creation. But eventually from that, when that inner, I call it like the inner sunrise starts to happen, and something starts like, wait a minute, there's more. I am not really happy in my whatever it is. Like, this is not a reflection of my nature at the moment. Maybe it's your job, or maybe it's even just shifting around the furniture around the home. Maybe it's about, maybe you're in a relationship that is starting to not feel nourishing, and it's not that you have to end it, or maybe it is, but bring change about. Like, this sense of stagnancy, after a while these waters become stagnant, and so we start to feel a little bit like a little bit icky inside. So how do we transform that ickiness? Is to will change. It starts all in the mind, which is another law of the hermetic principles. Everything starts with this inner mind, and it's not the mind that is this mind, the monkey mind, that we need to shut off. The mind is powerful. Our mind creates so much when it's connected with the heart. So in Egypt, it's called the Abba, or it's like the heart mind. So it's like this connection between here and here. And this is where we create from. And in between this, we have our mouth, which means we have our words. And so very powerful is, what are we saying? What are we saying? What is the narrative that we're telling ourselves? And also, what are the narratives that we're sharing with others? The words are so important. And this brings me to the final school of, which was the school of Memphite, of the creation myth. It all started with the word. And you'll notice that in these, after that, other religions took on a lot of these symbolisms. The spoken word that comes from the heart created everything. So it's from the heart where the power comes to create. But we create all the time because we're living, basically, life is so full of stories. Everything in life, really. Our life is a big story. Our memories, we write them down, we create stories. It's like, I was hurt at 5 years old, or I was abused. So then we create stories and stories and stories and stories and stories around that manifest as reality. And it's only when we start to go deep into the vibrational reality of what is actually my deeper narrative, and it has a certain vibration. We start to work with our sexuality. We start to work with our thoughts, with our beliefs. We start to go into the waters. We shake them. We vibrate them through shamanic practices, that we start to emerge with a new narrative for our life. Because the spoken word, what we tell ourselves and what we believe, has the power to create our life. So take a breath into that for a moment. Yeah. And these These narratives and beliefs come from very, very early childhood. From the minute we start to make sense of the world, and we start to make sense of the world, we're also starting to make sense of words. We're starting to make sense of structure. We're starting to form words, sentences. And so that's how we start to create a reality for ourselves. It's very powerful. So in a way, we can see again the artistry of life, the creativity of life. Script writing, stories, we're painting, we're creating things in this life. And we are ultimately a co-creator of that. We don't create everything. I feel like we are co-creators with the divine. Some part of life or of creation will remain hidden, will remain a mystery. And yet another part of us can create, can co-create with this mystery. So for example, like very classic is like, as a child, I was rejected. I wasn't loved. I wasn't seen by my parents, i.e., I don't deserve love. I'm not worthy. And so that starts to build the relationships that we create in our life, start to feel not seen. Maybe we attract people, difficulties in relationships or with beings where we just feel like no one sees me, no one really hears me, no one gets me. And so as we start to do this work, we go inside and we start to look deeper into ourselves. We start to listen more to this voice of this inner child, ultimately. What are you telling me? And start to listen. And from that, really do this beautiful work of what I call returning home, reparenting ourselves, neurologically rewiring ourselves, and coming to a place where we really start to integrate this inner child with this inner parents. And then from there, we start to feel more like our emotional body feels a little bit more stable. And then we can also, the next step is to also become more of a creator and manifester of how we want to really live life. All right, let's take a deep breath into that.